everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The Dose. Today I'm joined by Dr. Michael Spence, President and Provost of University College London. Dr. Spence, it's very nice to have you here today. How are you?
It's great to be with you, Blessing.
Thank you. Now, you head London's leading multidisciplinary university.
Yes.
16,000 staff, 50,000 plus students from all over the world. Before this, you were Vice-Chancellor at Sydney University, which had over 70,000 students. What does it take to run such large organizations?
Well, I think much the same as running any organization. You need a strategic capacity, but also you need to enjoy people and enjoy thinking about how organizations can work better. A university is a particular kind of organization, though, because, as a Vice-Chancellor, you're part CEO of a £2 billion turnover corporation, part chief worker in a workers' collective, part headmaster of big school, part mayor of a small town. We have 257 buildings. And so it's a very varied and distinctive kind of role.
Okay. So strategy and people. And how do you fuse that into 24 hours? What does a typical day look like for you?
So a typical day involves all sorts of things, from obviously overseeing the work of my immediate team, but also representing the university externally, making sure that I have my ear to the ground to understand what's really going on in the university, and my office arranges for me not only to make visits to departments, but also to have people into my office, and I have open hours. So it involves listening to the university at various different levels, and then participating in conversations with my team and others about how we're going and where we should go.
Amazing. Now, I was reading up about your career. I know you started off in law, and I also know that your parents were both educators or worked in education, and I wondered if you think that kind of paved the way for the career that you have today?
So actually my first 5 years at the university were in English and Italian literature, and then I finished a law degree, so I have degrees in English and Italian and in law and in Korean and theology, and have a bit of a jack of all trades and master of none. But that suits me for my current role, because the great thing about my job is that at 9 o'clock you have to know a little bit about classics, and at 10 o'clock about astrophysics as you think through the work of the university. And I grew up in a home where education was highly valued, and I'm sure that's part of what's helped me see the really transformative power of a university education for so many of our students.
Okay. I remember one of the interesting things I learned recently was that you are an ordained Anglican minister. How does your faith influence the way you lead?
Yeah, I think in a number of ways. The first is it's, I think, a profound insight of the Christian tradition that the world's broken, and I think it's really important to plan for and hope for the best, but to remember that things are never going to quite work out as you expect, and also to really expect the best of yourself and of your colleagues, but also to remember that we're all human, and to balance a vision of the world as a broken place with a vision of what might be possible in your work.
I like that. Now, you're busy with work, but you're also a family man. So there's always the question of how do they do it? I read recently a statement that one of your sons made, where he was trying to sort of describe how you balance work and family. And I think he put it quite beautifully by saying you are all things at all times. So you're always VC at the time when you made the statement, but you're also always dad. And he said you kind of blend everything together and you're always involved. So this blending everything together, is it like a deliberate, intentional strategy in terms of managing yourself or your time?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about contemporary technology is that it's possible to work in all sorts of ways and in all sorts of places, and I do take advantage of that. I think it's also important, though, that you carve out times of the week that are really family times. So, I try not to work on a Sunday, for example, and just to make sure that is time for church, time for my family.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And so you've been in this position, in this role for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is your best part of the job, and perhaps a challenging part of the job?
So the best part of the job is that the work of UCL is just so good across many fields. We just brought to market a drug that gives a single injection to haemophiliacs of particular kinds where you don't need blood transfusions. We've just done clinical trials on a drug that arrests the progress of particular kinds of dementia. We've done so. Every day I see amazing work at UCL, and every day I meet UCL students and alumni who are in one way or another changing the world. That's the great bit of the job. I think the difficult part of the job, particularly at a place like UCL, is that we're just good at so many things, and in an environment of diminishing resources, over time the financial support available for universities has declined as the costs have gone up. Making strategic choices between different areas of our work, that's tough.
Okay. Now, UCL is top for medicine and sciences, and the effect of the university is felt way outside the walls of the university. But how does UCL get the balance between research and academics? Do you get the right balance?
Yeah, so I think there's a real symbiosis between research and education. It's not just that people come from their laboratory and they talk about what they've just discovered in the classroom. Obviously that doesn't happen all the time, though it does happen far more than you might imagine. It's also the core skills that we teach our students, skills in critical thinking, in identifying problems, in formulating the problems in ways that they can be resolved, in asking the right questions, in other words, in looking for the right sorts of answers, in thinking through what the reasonable objections might be to those answers, in engaging in effective oral and written communication about what you've found and being open to conversation about whether you're wrong. That inquiry after truth that is central to the process of research is also central to the skills that we communicate to students, and we think they're pretty enduring skills, that they are skills that will certainly survive the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and all the rest of it, and that is very valuable not only for our students but for the society which they're a part.
Amazing. And just staying on UCL, last year UCL launched the Global Business School for Health in 22, which is the world's first business school dedicated completely to health. What drove UCL to create such a timely and disruptive business school like GBSH?
Well, look, health care and is one of the fastest growing areas of many economies. We know that with an aging population, it's going to be only more important. We know too that health is increasingly costly. Healthcare is increasingly costly for governments and for individuals, and therefore thinking about how healthcare can be delivered in a way that is efficient and in a way that is compassionate and in a way that's efficacious from a healthcare outcomes point of view is one of the great intellectual challenges of the 21st century. And many business schools have a health stream, but with our particular expertise, not only in health and healthcare, but also in the social sciences, it seemed an obvious project for us to bring those two things together and to establish a business school specifically dedicated to the health sector.
And what is your vision for the school going forward?
So I think going forward, not only should the school produce a great cadre of graduates to go off and both run but also bring reform to healthcare systems around the world, but we also need to be thinking about points of and modalities of delivery, about the economics of healthcare, about all the things that are going to make us better able to service a larger group of people more fairly in more challenging health environments as we go forward.
Okay. Now, from the lens of a university like UCL, what do you think the future looks like, just from a university perspective?
Yeah, so I think, universities are remarkably resilient institutions. A lot of what we do in teaching core skills in critical thinking, in looking for the truth, we've been doing it for an awfully long time. And of course, there are disruptive technologies, so there's the whole question of what the role of online as opposed to face-to-face education is going to be going forward and all the rest of it. But for a university like UCL, in a great location like London, I think there's always going to be an on-campus experience. There's always going to be communities of flesh and blood researchers getting together to argue about things, to think things through, to run laboratories, to do all those sorts of things that academics do now. So in lots of ways, the university of the future will look remarkably similar to the university of now. And hey, guess what? That's what the answer would have been if you'd asked me several hundred years ago, except that whereas then what we do was a privilege reserved for just a few, now of course UCL has a large number of students coming from all over the countries, from all sorts of background and from all over the world.
Okay, so as part of this interview, we asked a few students for any questions they might have for you.
Yes.
So I'm just going to throw some of them at you.
Sure.
The first one is, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to students while they're studying?
So I think the 3 pieces of advice that I'd give is, 1, really throw yourself into your studies. You can come to university with the attitude that you'll do enough to get by. That's not, I have to say, typical of UCL students. Most of them are here because they're passionate about what they want to do and they're really engaged in it, but that's important. Second, make the most that there are of the opportunities that there are in a place like this to do things outside the classroom, to be involved in clubs and societies, to go and hear all the sorts of speakers that there are on a campus, such as UCL's. And I suppose the third thing is, take the time while you are studying to stand back and think not only about what you're studying and not only about what you might do next, but also about meaning and purpose, about why you're doing what you're doing and why you might choose to do the next thing. Because you just have a little bit more time to have that wider focal lens as a student than you do at some other points in your life.
Okay, thank you. And another one, which I like, is, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? All sorts of things. So I enjoy my children, and I have 8 of them, but including 3 small ones, and so I spend a lot of my time ferrying them around from activity to activity in one way or another, or accompanying them on the tube. I play the oboe. I still have Korean and Chinese lessons. There's lots of things that I enjoy doing.
Brilliant. I don't know the oboe. I'm going to have to Google that after this.
Right.
If you wrote a book about your career so far, what would you title it? It's quite on the spot.
That is it. So there's a famous Australian book by a man called, I think, Albert Facey, called A Fortunate Life. So I'd say a fortunate work life. I've had the great privilege of working in some remarkable institutions with some remarkable people. And so I think that's what I'd call it.
I'll buy the book. And what do you look for in someone you hire?
Curiosity, common sense, a desire to get things done, obviously intelligence, but also emotional intelligence. I think with those skills you can go a long way.
Thank you. What should I prioritize once I start working? I guess that person is thinking, getting into a new job, what should my focus be?
Yeah, I mean, I think the beginning of a career, it's tough, right? Because you're working to establish your expertise in a particular field and to establish yourself in a particular work environment. But I suppose I'd say, don't let it eat you up. Remember to enjoy your work and to balance your work with exercise and with enjoying your family and friends.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'll just do one more. What are you reading at the moment?
What am I reading at the moment? I am reading a novel called Camilla that Jane Austen said was one of her great sort of models in the English novel. I think it could have done with a bit of an edit. It's very long indeed, but I'm enjoying it very much.
Okay, brilliant. That's all my questions. And it's been really nice speaking to you and for having you on The Dose. Thank you so much.
Really good to talk to you. So thank you very much for the invitation.